I'm going to focus on Venice today. Now, I suppose the big question about Venice is, why would you choose one of the most popular travel destinations for the independent traveller? I've never been part of a bigger group showing me around. I've learnt all about Venice, if you will, on my own, and I've been there now, I don't know, maybe half a dozen times. And although fundamentally Venice doesn't change, there are aspects to Venice that do. Because my most recent trip to Venice, one of my bugbears has been getting caught in a narrow passageway behind hordes of tourists that are either following a tour guide with an umbrella or a flag and being corralled from one site to the other. I can't think of anything worse, but it is beloved of so many tourists out there. This podcast is not for them. This is for you, the independent traveller. So this is just a few guiding principles from me based on my experience. It will only, at best, scratch the surface. I'm going to make reference to my blog. So I thought the best place to start is where everybody starts. And that's at the beginning. And Venice does kind of have a beginning. And it's not necessarily the airport, but it's where everything starts to congregate, if you will. And it does that because it's where the land meets the water. Because Venice is unique as a city placed on water. Now, lots of cities around the world have canal systems, and you notice these places are all described as the Venice of the North, the Venice of the Pampas, the Venice of Buenos Aires, whatever it is. Only Venice as a city is waterborne in the way it is. And for that reason, you'll always find the start more or less the same place. It's at the railway station. Is also close to the bus station, which is also close to many multi-storey car parks if you happen to come by car. Wherever it is, the starting point is always the same. So what, if you've never been to Venice, should be the first thing you do? My first tip is go to the Vaporetto station opposite the railway station and buy yourself a pass. Now, the pass will depend upon, and the cost of it will depend upon how many days you've been there. If you're there just for the day, buy a 24-hour pass. If you buy it at 10 o'clock in the morning, normally it's valid until 10 o'clock the following morning, and the same for the 2 and 3 days. And the longer you stay, the cheaper it gets. And you can find that by going on to the link to the Vaporetto, which is on the website. Now, if you're just going for a day trip, or you just want to get a flavour of what Venice is, my recommendation would be to get water bus number 1. The Vaporettos are quite open, although they do have some enclosed sections towards the back. And Vaporetto Route 1 will take you down the Grand Canal. There are 2, maybe 3 potential stopping off places, but I'm going to sort of take you on the full journey and we'll work our way back. You have to see St Mark's Square. I'm not a big fan of St Mark's Square, but you just have to see it, because if you haven't seen St Mark's Square, you really probably can't say you've properly done Venice. Okay, so when we get to St Mark's Square, here is tip number 2. Do not get off at San Marco. Now, San Marco is one of the stops. Get off at the next stop. It's called San Zaccaria. And the reason for that is, first of all, if you stay on the Vaporetto and you stay on the left-hand side, the port side of the vessel, you will get a fantastic vista from the water of St Mark's Square. Fantastic photo opportunity for free. So my recommendation is stay on till the stop after San Marco as it's called, St Mark's, and go to San Zaccaria. And the second reason for suggesting that is that because so many tourists get off at San Marco, you're not going to find as many hordes at San Zaccaria. It's busy, it's sure busy, but it's not as busy as San Marco, and walking distance to St Mark's Square is about the same, 2 to 3 minutes. So we're in St Mark's Square. What is there to do? Well, there's so much to do. There's so many restaurants and cafes and places to dine. But there are 2 things that you can definitely do if you haven't been before. And one is to visit the Doge's Palace. Very ornate building. You can't miss it. The biggest building in St Mark's Square. And sort of opposite and slightly to its left is the Campanile, the bell tower. Now, when we were there, it was very strictly governed in time slots, and there was a bit of a queue, certainly at the height of the season, but you get a great view from the Campanile. But there's a little free tip I can give you, especially if you're a fan of James Bond movies. Venice is often used as a destination for James Bond locations. You may remember the Roger Moore version, I think it was The Spy Who Loved Me, where he used a gondola that became a hovercraft. But I'm going a bit more recent than that. We're talking about Daniel Craig's debut in Casino Royale. So you've put the Doge's Palace behind you, the square is ahead of you, left is Florini's, which is the famous cafe, and then in the far left hand corner of the square you'll find the Venice Tourism Office, which offers good tips, by the way. If you don't want to follow mine, go there. But I'm sending you there because that was the location of the bank where Vespa withdraws the money, which is meant for the British Treasury, of course, and then sets James Bond off on a mighty chase across Venice. It wasn't a bank at all. It's the Venice Tourist Information Office. It's open and you can go in and have a look. So, St Mark's Square, in brief, there's more to do there, and I leave that to your own explorative opportunities. You can go through St Mark's Square into an adjacent area where there are gondolas, quite a beautiful area, and a few shops there, very nice shopping area. Well, the next thing to do is really to try and get from St Mark's Square to Rialto. And there are two ways you can do this. If you're mobile, the best way is on foot. But go via Academia. I'll come back to Academia in a moment. Before I suggest that if you're not so mobile, you get back on the ferry. And don't forget, you've got two options, and you may have moved, and we'll find now that San Marco Vaporetto stop is nearer to you. Get on the Vaporetto, and let's go next to Academia. Academia is a very, very beautiful part of Venice. Not so much for what's there, but for what you can see. First of all, get onto the top of Academia Bridge, and you'll see before you, as you look towards St Mark's Square, those fine vistas painted by Canaletto. It is straight out of an oil painting. Now, if you're staying overnight in Venice, here's a top tip, and I saw this on a television program many years ago, and this year I got the opportunity to do it, and that was to get up at dawn. And in the summer, that's about 6:30 in the morning. It is stunning, quiet, and one or two other people who have the same idea of you are out there. The light is sensational as the sun comes up and catches windows with gold, and it's just magical. And that's what I did one morning on Academia Bridge, 6:30, looking at those beautiful buildings captured so ornately by Canaletto and many other fine artists over many years. I was looking at the sights that they were looking at as the sun came up. Absolutely beautiful. Now, from Academia, you can cross the bridge and sort of just explore the small canal system around. I mean, Venice just for exploring. I don't need to tell you where to go. Just go. Just find it. You can get back on the Vaporetto at Academia, or you can continue your walk and then go to Rialto. Very busy is Rialto. There is actually a stop for the B Vaporetto, and that will take you back to the station directly. So if your day should happen to end at Rialto and you didn't want to stop at every stop, which number one does, which I told you about earlier, get on B and it will take you straight to the railway station. What has Rialto got to offer? It is just your archetypal Venetian scene. Beautiful medieval bridge, busy, bustling. It's always been a marketplace for Venice. It still is. Is it too commercial? Oh yeah, it's way too commercial. It's Venice, for goodness sake. But it is absolutely worth doing. Again, get onto the top of Rialto Bridge, look down the canal, take your pictures and enjoy it. Go over the bridge and turn right, so the canal is now on your right hand side, and there is the old fish market. Not quite as commercial as where the bridge is. I mean, it literally is just tucked around the corner. And some of the James Bond scenes for Casino Royale were filmed there as well. I think where the building falls into the, if you've seen the film, you'll know that there's a great scene where one of the buildings falls into the canal. You won't find that building. It doesn't exist. I'm going to spoiler alert here. It's a 1/3 scale model that they built at Pinewood Studios that they sank into a massive tank. And so the building that supposedly falls down isn't there, but a few buildings close to Rialto on the opposite bank served as the template for the Casino Royal building collapse. But now I'm going to take you away from the centre, the heartbeat of Venice, and I'm going to put you on another boat, and we're going for another adventure. So now my recommendation is that we're going to try and visit the two islands that lie to the north of Venice, Murano and Burano. Hard to do if you're on a day trip, it's true, but it can be done. And the reason it's hard is it takes a little while for the ferries to get from A to B. So the best way to do it, we're in Rialto, remember, is to walk a short distance up to what's called Fuente Nova B, Fuente F-T-E-N-O-V-E-B. It's a Vaporetto station where you can catch a ferry. It takes about 36 minutes, every 12 minutes, and they take you to the island of Murano. And Murano offers the heart of the glass-blowing industry. So it's quite industrial, really, for Venice, but not an unpleasant island and well worth a visit. But here is another one of my tips. If you are staying overnight in Venice, actually in the Grand Canal area, it is likely that your hotel will offer you a speedboat trip to Murano one way. The idea is that you're going to buy some glass when you get there. Take the offer, take the boat. Even if you've got a Vaporetto ticket, take the boat. It only takes 10 minutes. It gets you to Murano quickly. Yes, you've got to see some glass blowing, but who wouldn't want to see that anyway? There is a bit of a hard sell. I didn't personally find it too much fun. I didn't buy anything, but I would, if I was offered that trip again, snap their hands off and take the speedboat to Murano. It's just a very posh way of travelling and very worthwhile, and you don't have to buy glass at the end of it. Go to Murano, have a look there. You don't have to stay a long time, but well worth a little visit. And the reason we're not staying for a long time is that we're now going to get the next Vaporetto to our next destination, Burano. It is like the mainland of Venice. I call it the mainland. I know it's all on water, but it's a smaller version of it. So Burano, a pretty little island. And when you go to places that try and depict what Venice is, obviously they can't build a grand canal. Burano is kind of what they have in mind. I particularly think about that if you go to Las Vegas and you go to Venice on the strip there. So pretty little island. I guarantee you this, I have never seen tourist hordes following an umbrella or a flag being guided around Burano. Very small, single story, double story, accessible. And I'm going to make a recommendation here, and I don't really want to make personal recommendations because it's for you to discover the places, but I always end up going to the same restaurant, and it's called Le Gatto Nero, the Black Cat. Beautiful restaurant near one of the canals, and it does have canals in Burano, just a couple of them, very, very beautiful. And it has an English language website, so you can book ahead. It's not the cheapest place in the world, but I've always had beautiful meals there. El Gato Negro, if you forget the name, it's on the blog. So everything you can find, and I've got a link to the blog. Hopefully you'll find it. Just search Discovering the World on WordPress, and you should be able to find my blog and my 2 entries about Venice, from which I'm taking this episode today. Burano, very beautiful. Just make allowances for one thing. The Vaporetto, and your ticket will include the journey to Burano in it, is every 30 minutes. So the ferry is every 30 minutes, more or less on the half hour. And it takes just over an hour to get back onto the main part of Venice. But well worth it. And the journey is terrific. You know, you're not going massively fast or anything, but you can see the whole of Venice come into view, and it just gives you a different perspective from what you might have seen on the holiday brochures. It's lots of coloured houses, away from the hordes, well worth a visit. So let's return now to the main part of Venice, and you might be asking, what else is there to do in Venice itself? And the answer is that there is just so much, and I've already pointed you in the direction of the tourist board, but I would just offer you one final idea, and that is to enjoy some of the culture. Now, we talked about the artist on Accademia Bridge earlier. One of the great Italian composers, Antonio Vivaldi, wrote the Four Seasons. And you'll know the Four Seasons if you've ever been on hold with a call centre, because it is a very popular piece of music to listen to. And because of that, you might have been absolutely fed up about listening to the Four Seasons. But go and hear it in its purest form at Interpreti Veneziani, and there is a link on the blog to the website. If you go on their website, it is in English. They'll tell you when the concertos are and how you can get a ticket for it. Not only do they do the Four Seasons, they tend to do one other piece of classical music as well. It's in San Vidal Church. San Vidal Church is very, very close to Accademia. Beautiful piece of music, beautiful performance, and I would recommend Interpreti Veneziani as a place to go and listen to the very best of Italian music. This year, when I went there, I ventured into the Lido for the first time. Now, this is a 7-mile strip of land, a beach, if you will, and you can reach it easily from San Marco. It's far from classical Venice, but if, like me, you wanted some time away from the crowds, from the alleyways, then the Lido provided it. And I'm going to leave Venice there, a sort of 20-minute run through of some of my personal highlights. I've noted a few more ideas for you in the blog, Discovering the World Travel at WordPress. You'll find it there. Just put it in as a search in one of your search engines and you'll find the blog and links. Well, thanks for listening to this version. In future episodes, we'll take a look at Lake Garda as promised, and we'll be hearing from independent traveller Fiona about her tips and the things that she does when she ventures abroad as an independent traveller. Don't forget, you can get in touch with the podcast. There is a link. Send me an email. Perhaps you've seen something in Venice that we've missed out, or you've got a suggestion about a place we should visit for a later episode. Whatever it is, get in touch with the podcast. We'd love to hear from you.